listener production.
Hello, Sasha Barbagat with you. Welcome to The Briefing. He's a comedian, he hosts a podcast, and he seems to be on Prime Minister Anthony Albanese's mind a little bit lately. Alex Dyson of Matt and Alex All Day Breakfast and Triple J hosting fame is having yet another crack at federal politics. This is his third go running as an independent, raising the question many are wondering, why?
Because I have seen people who have done it, and it breaks my heart. I just think about Peter Garrett, watching him in there. He became the environment minister, very principled man with a storied career, very successful in his field, got into a political party, into parliament, and was stifled by the system. It's like politics is so glacial, and you can see he can't say what he thinks in this party system. Wearing a red tie, he's stifled by the party line.
Alex Dyson explains his motivation for his latest run at Parliament and gives his honest assessment of politicians he thinks didn't quite live up to their values when they were in power. That in the second half of this episode. First, though, we welcome back Antoinette Lattouf to the headlines. It is Wednesday, August 21st.
Hey, Sasha. G'day, everyone. It's good to be back. So, Polly's behaving badly. We know that is nothing new, but new laws to pull them into line is. So the details of a long-awaited Parliamentary Standards Commission that are designed to hold our politicians to account for bad behaviour, these are going to be unveiled today. So this new legislation will be introduced to Parliament, and it will considerably ratchet up the consequences for federal MPs who engage in gross things like harassment, bullying, inappropriate behaviour, discrimination, sexual misconduct and assault. So some of the penalties will include fines of up to 5% of their salary and removal from powerful committees and even suspensions from Parliament. So red-carded out of Parliament.
Yeah, so I guess the next question then is, how will it work? Well, the way it's been explained so far is that a commissioner will consider a complaint that is made. If it meets the threshold for further review, the matter will then be heard by 3 commissioners. And if they decide an investigation should go ahead, both parties will get a right of reply before a decision is made. So it's kind of, you said it, Antoinette, Polly's behaving badly is nothing new. This is a really big step in kind of holding them to account for those rules that, maybe aren't quite as explicit in Parliament as you'd expect them to be. The other thing that I was curious about was, what will the public know about what goes on with this commission? So whether the commission decides to share an investigation that is happening or not will depend on a public interest test that's going to be applied to each case. So we won't necessarily know everything that's going on behind closed doors of this commission. If they do deem it is in the public interest, details about what's being investigated could then be made public.
And then if an MP is actually handed a sanction, that will be made public. And hopefully it's going to be more than a slap on the wrist with some wet lettuce and something of significance.
Israel Defense Forces has recovered the bodies of 6 hostages who were taken during Hamas's October 7 attack and taken to Gaza. In an overnight ground invasion in Khan Yunis, which is in southern Gaza, the bodies of 6 men, all civilians, were found. The men were abducted from their homes in kibbutzim adjacent to Israel's barrier wall with the Gaza Strip.
The IDF didn't give any details on how or when the men died, but over the last few months, the families of all the men had been informed that they'd been killed. Currently, the number of Israelis who remain in captivity sits at around 120. The death toll of Palestinians has exceeded 40,000, and there remains thousands of detainees in Israeli prisons without charge.
Yeah, and also what we've seen in the last 24 hours or so in Gaza is at least 10 people killed in an Israeli airstrike on a school, which was housing displaced families west of Gaza City. Now, schools have been the target lately by airstrikes in Gaza. So this is yet another one to add to that very unfortunate list.
The US election is less than 3 months away, and the second day of the Democratic National Convention is happening later today, with both Barack and Michelle Obama headlining. The event will also include a symbolic moment to confirm Kamala Harris as the presidential nominee. So this is when each state representative confirms their vote for her in what's known as the roll call. Day one, though, belonged to current President Joe Biden, who passionately defended his record in the White House while throwing his full support behind Harris's nomination.
Donald Trump is going to find out the power of women in 2024.
Yeah, it was a very passionate speech, reminiscent of, some of Joe Biden's earlier addresses where he had that fight and that passion. He was seen wiping away tears after speaking. Clearly a big moment for him, but I got the impression at least that he knows he's made the right decision in endorsing Kamala and for him to step down. Hillary Clinton also gave a really heartfelt speech on day one, and she spoke about Harris shattering the glass ceiling. And that is, of course, the one that she couldn't quite break back in 2016 when she ran against Donald Trump. Now, something funny that kind of happened on the sideline. So Kamala Harris made an unscripted or unannounced appearance at the DNC on day one. She came out and she was wearing this tan suit, right? And I think we've all kind of gotten used to her in these great bright blue suits, and she was wearing this tan one. Now, commentators think this was a callback moment to something that happened with Barack Obama exactly 10 years ago to the day when the then president showed up to an ISIS briefing in a tan suit. Now, I think for women, we have a bit more wardrobe to play with, and I think that's, it's just a fact of how, women in politics are viewed. I don't think they have to stick to the navy blue suit like men do. They are upheld to those quite, I feel like, strict standards for blokes. But yeah, Barack Obama went, you know what, I'm wearing a tan suit to this. And he was called out by Republicans for being unserious because he decided to wear this colour instead of, a navy blue or a black suit. So people reckon Kamala was trying to rage bait Republicans by rocking up on day one of the DNC in a tan suit. Whether that's the case or not, I don't know. But I found that a pretty funny tidbit from the sidelines.
When I first saw the commentary about her suit and the colour of it, I was like, oh, here we go again. Women in politics, there's more discussion about their marital status and whether they have children and what they wear than what they stand for. But then, yes, I do recall Obama with his tan suit. I don't know. I just reckon the United States has bigger problems than the colour of the suit the president's wearing.
Fair enough. Hey, look, as well, something cool happening today. Jack Schlossberg, he's Vogue's brand new political reporter and JFK's grandson. He is going to speak at the convention, and we actually have a really cool deep dive on him, which we put out on the 19th of July if anyone wants to go back and have a listen. And the world's oldest person has died at the age of 117. US-born Maria Brañas Morera was living in a nursing home in Spain when she passed away, and she'd been there for the last 20 years. Now, she did tell Guinness World Records, who had verified her age, that she had lived such a long life thanks to, quote, order, tranquility, good connection with family and friends, contact with nature, emotional stability, no worries, no regrets, lots of positivity, and staying away from toxic people.
Oh, I love that for her. So she was born on the 4th of March, 1907. And for a little bit of context, that was less than 4 years after the Wright brothers launched the first ever power-driven flight. And it was 2 years before the construction had even started on the ill-fated Titanic. So Maria lived through World War I, World War II, and the Spanish Civil War. She, funnily enough, also enjoyed using the social platform X, saying, I am old, very old, but I'm not an idiot. Her bio reads on the platform formerly known as Twitter.
Yeah, love that. What a great way to look at life. Reading through the things that she said she had in order to live a long life, I get it. Staying away from toxic people. I like the idea of a bit of tranquility and getting out in nature. Maybe we should all take a leaf out of Maria's book. Interestingly, the title of the oldest person ever recorded, that belongs to Jean Louise Calment. She was born on February 21, 1875, and she lived for 122 years. That is the record at the moment. So we're still a little way off beating that. The title now goes to a woman in Japan who's 116. So we'll see if we can crack 122 again. Hey, Antoinette, as I said, welcome back. We loved having you back for the headlines today. Next up, it is our deep dive looking into why Alex Dyson is making yet another tilt at politics.
Thanks very much, Mr. Speaker. I thank the member for one and for his question. And of course, Alex Dyson knows all about the member for Wannon, and we'll be interested to see what happens at the next election when people make a judgment about his character.
Hey, Bension here. And that was Prime Minister Anthony Albanese in Parliament this week, having a little jab at Liberal member for Wannon Dan Tehan, who's facing yet another challenge to his seat at the upcoming federal election, probably early next year. His challenger, for the third time, is Alex Dyson, known famously for his listener podcast Matt and Alex All Day Breakfast, which he co-hosts with former Triple J hosting buddy Matt O'Kine. But why does someone like Alex Dyson do this again? And as someone with big ambitions for change on things like the housing crisis, the climate crisis, if he does finally win this seat, can he actually get anything done as an independent with just one vote in Parliament? Alex Dyson, welcome to the briefing. So my first big question is, why do you keep doing this, Alex?
It is such a good question, isn't it? It's I've thought of myself a few times because you're right. And I often ask other people whilst I'm going around running as an independent, going, "Oh, I'll do this one, you do the next one," and they're going, "Oh God, no, absolutely not. You couldn't catch me dead running for Parliament," which is true because who in their right mind would run and be a candidate for a political party or election at some point? And I was thinking about that one time, and I realised, that's probably why we get a lot of people in their wrong mind running for Parliament because, I'm sure there's a lot of power, a lot of prestige they're going for, and people like us are on the losing end of it a lot of the time.
So is this where you announce on the briefing that you're not, in fact, running as an independent?
No, I am running it as an independent because when you see that, you realise, it is a lot of normal people are put off from the process. It's about doing what you can do to help. And I found myself in a position, having a place I care about, my hometown of Warrnambool and the surrounding regions where I grew up, and, mum born in Ararat, spend my school holidays in Lorne. It's a really beautiful part of Australia and one that I care deeply about. There's the second one that I've, more uniquely positioned with my time that I can commit to these sort of things. Podcasting, quite a flexible profession these days. My business that I started with a few friends, my small business, is sort of running itself. We've got a great team there. And so, I've got more time than other people who might have to devote to something as big as an election campaign. And the third one is just an annoyance at politicians and the way they sort of treat everyday Australians. And when they come up here and talk about the cost of living or the housing crisis and that sort of thing, I'm like, hang on, you were the same people who were in charge and helped cause these things, and now you're asking to trust us to fix them. It's that little soup of reasons that has got me going back again. And I guess the final one just being, I like meeting people and talking to people and mainly listening to people and finding out their stories. And so that's one of the great things about running for Parliament as well.
Okay, your platform says that you want to bring integrity into politics, improve ailing infrastructure, address the housing and climate crises, and ensure your electorate gets its fair share of funding. But realistically, as an independent with a single vote in Parliament, will you have any power to do any of those things?
Well, I think when you get in, you will have the power. Pressure is power. Putting pressure on people is power. I think I was just reading an article from last election about the most marginal seat in the country of Bass, right? It's on a 0.4% margin when Scott Morrison and Anthony Albanese were campaigning. Scott Morrison visited that electorate 3 times. A Prime Minister hasn't been to Wannon in my part of the world for a very long time. So the mere presence of running and going is the pressure to get these sort of things done. It brings the promises out. You've got new aquatic centres being promised for Bass. You did the marginal seat next door to one Corangamite, which has gone back and forth between the Labor Party. You look at the surf clubs there, they're all multi-million-dollar new glass, sheer, beautiful facilities. And the Warrnambool one was built in the 1950s, and hasn't got the money. And so I feel going in, even if it's not me doing the job or, getting it, if other people promise it and the people of the town get the services that they need, if the roads are fixed up because other people are worried about their jobs and therefore make the promises, that's as good as a win for me. Working in the media, being a politician and wearing a suit all the time is not my ideal, thought of a good time. So, but having the events happen and the things that help everyday Australians get better, whether it is housing and those issues, I think it'd be great. And the fact that I'm not, a career politician and worried about keeping my job means I can make long-term decisions that other politicians in the future can take credit for, where, when housing's fixed because we bought a plan in, 2024, 25, and in, 10, 15 years when things have stabilised and more Australians are able to get into a home at an affordable price and young people can do that, I'm happy for other people to take the credit for the decisions they've made this time, because we're in this problem because of decisions made 10, 15, 20 years ago as well. And so, yeah, I think independents can have a big run at that, and part of it is pressure, and I think we can hopefully get a few of these things done.
All that said, part of the reason why those things can't be done by you specifically is because you're not in a political party. Political parties are the only ones that can actually have majorities in Parliament pass things through legislation. Why not get into power rather than holding power to account?
Because I have seen people who have done it, and it breaks my heart. I just think about Peter Garrett, watching him in there. He became the environment minister, very principled man with a storied career, very successful in his field, got into a political party, into Parliament, and was was stifled by the system. It's like politics is so glacial, and you can see he can't say what he thinks in this party system. Wearing a red tie, he's stifled by the party line. You watch what Malcolm Turnbull did in his own party. You're watching him, I'm not sure this guy actually believes what he's saying here. And then lo and behold, he gets out of the political party and can actually say what he thinks. And he calls the current leader of the Liberal Party, his former colleague, a thug. He wasn't saying that at the time. He was essentially lying to the Australian populace. And so being an independent, I think it means every vote is a conscious vote in Parliament. So yes, I'm not going to be able to come up and say, yes, I will give you millions of dollars for this road, but I'm going to say I'll fight for as much as I can from the people in power. And we saw the last time independents held the balance of power in the Parliament in the 2010 Gillard government. Rob Oakeshott, Tony Windsor, Bob Katter, all three of them put the pressure on, and we got the most legislation ever passed by an Australian government in decades. And so it's really heartening to see the effect these independents can have, and it shows that contrary to the party lines, chaos does not ensue. In fact, it was an antidote to the chaos we've seen of the major parties swapping leaders for about 12 years.
What do you think needs to change in Australian politics? Because most people in Australian politics are in parties. So would you have advice to them, or do you simply think that we need a whole parliament full of independents to make change in Australia?
No, I think there's place for parties, but they need to have their focus on doing the best thing for their electorates and getting rid of the egos, I think, of it. We saw recently, just this week, the Premier of New South Wales paying credit to the former Liberal Party members for their work in the new Metro Tunnel going under Sydney, that kind of thing. When I first did my run in 2019, to Mr. Tom Tilley on the Triple J Hack program, paid tribute to Dan Tehan's role, the current incumbent of Warrnambool, who's been there for 5 terms, for his role, because talking to one of the local councillors in Warrnambool said, he was the guy who helped get a cancer ward in Warrnambool. And that was really personal to me because my mum passed away from cancer in a regional area. So I made a point of going, good work. We're all benefiting from this kind of thing. So a bit more positivity, because there's nothing more infuriating to Australians, I think, when there is a change of government and suddenly from one side of politics, a country that was all going well and where everything's fine is now saying, it's a mess and the government is going terribly. And it's like, we're living in this gaslit world where a truth, I think, needs to break through for a little bit. I don't think the parties necessarily are the problem, but the lack of truth and, doing whatever it takes to win is an extremely dire situation that I think people in the parties should really cut out.
Is there a politician in Parliament right now who you admire?
I'm a big fan of David Pocock. I think you could just see the independence and the intelligence and the kind-heartedness and the empathy in the man. He's a really thoughtful dude, and it's been really great to watch him flourish, because he was unsure, and because we'd come across each other, he gave me a call before thinking about running for Parliament. It was like, what do you reckon? Is it a good thing? I'm like, bro, if we do our bit, we'll be able to do it. And seeing him get in and seeing the influence he's having and seeing the way that he represents his electorate, I think the people of the ACT, it's a risk electing an independent senator, but I know, seeing the power he has, there's an evidence that electing someone who's there, who's available, and who's able to listen and isn't beholden to a few of the bigger businesses, which have been pulling a lot of strings in Australian politics for many years. It's so refreshing. And so, yeah, that's someone I respect a lot. But also everyone, to a certain degree, it is a tough job. And so I respect everyone for giving it a go. And the people who have the right reasons in mind, I think is really great. It sounds like I'm talking about maths here, people going, I just want people in it for the right reasons. But it is true if you're in there to help the people, and I think there's plenty there who are, it can shine through for sure.
If you win, will you keep doing Matt and Alex from your office in Canberra?
I would really hope to, because that is one of the great things. We are able to talk about multiple different things in the podcast. So keeping young people involved in politics. Look, it's currently a daily show. I don't think that will potentially work if we're doing it, because my number one job is then fulfilling the trust in me from the people of Wannon. So I would not want to let them down. But maybe, I don't know, is there such a thing as quarterly podcasting? Maybe we could do a new episode every financial year. I'm sure I'd love to keep chatting to him and letting people know, because it is the poison chalice of working, and getting things done, but also telling people about the things that you get done. So, yeah, I'd love working with Matt, so I'd be great. But my number one priority would certainly be the people of Wanted.
Well, it's wonderful to have you on a podcast.
Wonderful to be on one.
Alex Dyson there. Thanks for listening to this episode of The Briefing. That's it for now. Before you go, though, we'd love it if you could share this app with someone you think might enjoy it. And if you want to keep up with our other content, you can check us out on Instagram at The Briefing Podcast, and on TikTok and YouTube, just search Listener Newsroom. And we'll be back in your feed with another episode this afternoon from 3. I'm Bension Siebert. Catch you soon.
Listener.